This is Business Fusion. Welcome to another episode. And today I'm your host, Philip de la Vega, joining me with my co-host, Carlos Raldiris. And we're going to continue our series of middle market leadership and management. Carlos, what do we have today?
All right. Well, our guests can already see him. We have Derek Dodge. Derek and I go way back, probably about 20 years or so. Spent a little bit of time in the UK together, working on, of all things, sales development and sales training and things like that. So very excited to invite him to the podcast. And Derek, why don't you start off by just giving us a little background, giving our viewers a little bit of background on who you are.
Well, Carlos and Philip, it's a pleasure to be here, and to everybody out there, it's good to meet you. So Derek Dodge, born and raised in Southern California. There's only a few of us that can say that, but I did leave. So I left and went to university up in Oregon, went to a school called Willamette University, liberal arts school, and majored in business economics, and got a chance to play some competitive basketball and baseball, which was great. So I had a great experience, went back to Southern California, and then finally got a job in the beverage business. So I joined a company called Brown-Forman Beverage Company and started off as a merchandiser on the street, merchandising, selling, and busting my chops off in all the grocery stores in Southern California. Spent 5 years with them, took an opportunity to join a company called Cadbury Schweppes out of the UK. And spent 26 years with Cadbury, both on the confectionery side in the UK and then also on the beverage side here in the US, and had a great experience calling on Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper 7-Up independent bottlers, along with managing brokers, our warehouse direct business. And I had a great opportunity to manage the Walmart Sam's business for 10 years in Bentonville, Arkansas, which many of you are very familiar with. And then had a chance to lead our national accounts department, all retail channels, for about 6.5 years. Left them to join Hoya Vision Care. So I left the beverage business and got into the optical medical device business and became their CEO president for 3 years, ran the Americas region. And that's a story for another day. After that experience and flying over to Asia for 3 years, I decided to do something different. And I joined a distillery winery here in Dallas, Texas, called Southern Champions. I've been with them for about 18 months as their chief strategy officer, driving transformational change for a small to now becoming a medium-sized company. So Carlos and Philip, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. Yeah, I think Philip, he may have one or two things to say about sales. What do you think?
Well, I have been known to lead some salespeople in my lifetime. Yeah. So one of the things I think our viewers, Derek, would be interested. Many times people consider sales just to be overall, covers everything, but the industries are so different for inside sales, outside sales, direct sales, all of these things. Give us a little bit of perspective on exactly your experience and what you can bring. Do you want to share with us right now? What type of sales specifically?
Yeah, Philip, thanks for the clarity. I think for the purpose of today, I think my topics or discussion will be centered around more outside sales and specific to probably B2B and also B2C. And that will be both from a retail perspective as well as a e-commerce perspective. Do I have experience in inside sales? Yes, I've led that for over the years, but I think we'll save that for maybe the next conversation.
Yeah, that sounds great. So given your experience, and you've had some great companies to work for, what are some of the differences that you found over the years between the small, medium, or large companies? What do they focus on, or what are some of the challenges that you've seen?
Yeah, Philip, a really good question. I think there's 3 points. Let me start with right up front, and then we'll kind of end on it and make sure we've addressed it. One is we're going to talk a lot about today about competition, how competition really is coming from all perspectives, from small startup companies as well as the big, large companies, and that can be from innovation or disruptive innovation or whatever it may be. Second point is relationship selling has completely transformed now to to more of a data insights and much more of a category perspective. And then finally, e-commerce is here to stay. If your listeners, I'm sure they're well aware of it. So to your question, from a small, medium, and large company, I've been very fortunate now to work on all three, and I can tell you they're all three quite differently, and your audience is going to know that. So if you're a small company, you're typically hiring people that have experience in that particular industry or field. They have some sort of relationship. They're very assertive, and you're hiring people that you're hiring people that can make an immediate impact, because remember, it's all about revenue. When you're starting up a business, you need revenue desperately to keep the lights on, to keep the things going. However, every decision you make is a critical decision, because it either means I'm in the red, or how far deep in the red are you, right? So it's those are, and you typically have very limited resources and data in terms of those decisions. So you're flying blind a little bit. Medium-sized companies now that, anywhere from let's just call it from 100 million to $1 billion business, your sales organization is much more of a hybrid approach. Your organization is a little bit relationship selling from some of the folks in the organization, but you're also now hiring people that are much more data driven. You have more brand and category insights because your company's buying those. You've got CRM tools, you've got syndicated data. So now you've got some information in there, and your organization is really kind of going through a growing pains, because now you're accelerating growth, and now you're starting to recognize that talent you have in your organization may not be meeting your longer term needs. So you've got to evolve to that and have those core competencies that you're really addressing. And then your compensation looks quite different for the sales organization as well, because when you're a startup company, how you pay people versus a mid-sized company is different. Those measurements and how you measure base versus variable comp becomes very, very important. And then when I spent all those years working for Dr. Pepper, the Snapple Group, that selling is much different, because in a larger company like that, you've got a lot more silos. You've got very specialized teams. You do team approach selling, very objective driven, very fact-based driven. And then now your compensation looks quite different for your sales team too, because now there's equity and things like that involved in it. So I mean, all three companies are all three sizes of business. Your approach and the talent you need is quite different.
Right.
That's good. Philip, I mean, why don't you tell us a little bit about, whether that resonates for some of the kinds of sales teams that you've worked in and organizations you've worked in?
Yeah, I've been blessed to work with some of the B2B and B2B2C, and also inside sales. And you mentioned this, Derek. One of the things that I've noticed, and actually, I'm going back to 2000. She was 2004, 2005, and our group internally at the time, I was working for Nokia. My group internally was trying to come up with this winning account relationship tool, WAR kind of thing, which essentially was the CRM.
Yeah.
Right, because there was this misperception of sales and just having this great relationship, but the account management is not the same as the account planning aspect of it. Because as a leader, one of the challenges when you lead sales is developing others, right? Having a systematic approach of success. In other words, anybody can have a rock star. We all have one. But can you replicate that along the team? And to do so, a lot of it has to do with what tools and what metrics do you have that can actually help lead the team. And to me, over the last decade or so, the analytical portion of sales management has become, I wouldn't say more rigid, it's being more specific and surgical on the approach to sales. Is that your experience as well, Derek, or what have you seen?
Absolutely. I mean, what's really transpired in probably the last, let's call it 6-7 years, is how you sell, particularly to retail. And in my background, let's just call it, is very retail centric. So when you're selling to retail, you have to have a consumer centric perspective. So you need to understand need states. You need to know when the consumer is interacting with your product, at what times of the day, at what social setting, how, when, and what type of packaging, because that really helps sets the type of promotions, who you partner with, what your pricing strategy looks like. All those things come from that. So it's the data today in terms of how you make decisions on how you price, package, promote, whatever may, and what channels you want to drive your business become critical.
That's pretty interesting. One of the things that, as you were both talking, I was reflecting on was, some of my experience, both being responsible for my own kind of sales early on in my operations career, but even more to the point is some of the models that over the years have taken hold and have, I think, guided the way that organizations develop their salespeople, right? So, I remember early on, someone talking to me about need satisfaction selling, right? This whole idea that, you approach your sales from a consultative standpoint, right? Which is very different than the sort of operational experience I had, where it was cold calling, right? You're just doing the numbers, right? You're trying to catch as many people as you can. And then that kind of evolved into the whole hunter-farmer methodology, right? I know that's something that was pretty common on the finished packaged goods side. I'm wondering though, Philip, from your perspective, have you seen some of the evolution of some of those what I'll call sales development models as well, or do you think it's been a one size fits all for the services?
I don't know if one size fits all, but I can say that the hunter and farmer perspective is still alive, right? Especially when you come to some of the sales that are more services. There are so many inside sales centers out there that are hunters. They're out there doing business development, and they're really out there to do just that specific aspect of the business. It's just getting leads, turning the leads into sales. Now, subsequent to that comes the farming or long-term relationships and whatever not. But I don't think that's gone away. I mean, that's what I've seen thus far. I don't know, Derek, have you seen the same thing or?
Yeah, and to Philip, to your point, I can talk very specifically. When I was running Hoya Vision Care here for the Americas, I couldn't stand the term of hunters and farmers, and it still drives me nuts. But it exists today through and through, and the reason for it is when, and it doesn't matter which business sector you're in, when you need new business, you need a hunter. You need someone who doesn't take no for an answer, who's very persuasive, very people-oriented, who can relate and have that gift of gab, if you want to call it. And that skill set is much, much different than the skill set of a so-called farmer, which is now you've got an existing customer and now you need to develop that business. So now you need to drive velocity, you need more sales, you need marketing, you need more things to pull something off the shelf or more things to pull things out of the store. So the skill set and competencies of the two roles are completely different, but do they exist today? Whether you're in the optical vision care business, you're selling soda, or you're selling CPG, products, Kimberly-Clark and whatever, industry it may be. Absolutely, it exists today, and you have to hire for it.
So in some respects, the more things change, the more they remain the same.
From my perspective, from competency, I would agree, but other things are changing very quickly. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk about that. I mean, Philip, you want to?
Well, I would agree. Yes, the more they change, they stay the same. However, I do believe that we're becoming a lot more sophisticated, and I hate to repeat myself, but I think that business analytics, predictive analytics on sales, is a lot more robust today. So in other words, you're not just looking at maintaining or developing the relationship. You're looking at your customers' needs, what it is that they need in the future, what is the product providing exactly what they want. That whole cycle of feedback to be more proactive on meeting your customers' needs is greatly enhanced nowadays. In the past, it was more of a push strategy, as we might have covered in the past, right? Like, this is what we have, okay, I'll give you a better deal. I'll give you a discount. I'll give you a bundle or something. Now, I think consumers and customers are a lot more decisive and clear on what they want. So we have to be more sophisticated and understanding those needs ahead of time. Would you agree with that,
That's great.
Derek?
Philip, I would, but let me ask you this. Is that the responsibility of the salesperson, or is that someone internally within the organization providing the salesperson that information?
Great question. That is a great point. I love that. So sales overall, if you're the chief revenue officer, supposedly you're supposed to be not just doing the sales aspect of the sell in, but also the sales management, which entails the sales operation aspect of it, right? The analytics portion of it, to be more surgical in your approach of making those sales. If you're explicitly a sales rep, then that training needs to happen way before then. And you know, the sales leader, whatever the title might be, is the one that needs to look at the whole picture holistically and say, like, this is what we need. I don't know if that clarifies it a little bit.
It does, but let me put on my Dr. Pepper, Snapple hat, right? I would go into Bentonville, Arkansas, and go see our friends at Walmart. I would have 4 or 5 people with me on that call. So I had someone who was insights driven. I had someone who was revenue management driven. I had someone who was promotional brand driven, and I had a salesperson who was responsible for the day-to-day business. So, I had myself surrounded with all the right people to have the right conversation with the customer. If I'm a smaller, medium-sized company that's 50, 60, $100 million, do I have all those resources? And how do we provide, that type of thinking? Because I completely agree with you. I'm just thinking of, as organizations evolve, right? Just how you get that done today.
Oh, no, you're 100%. So I think we're in agreement on that. Then you got to talk about the different levels of sales management, right? To your point, a startup, a ramp up, a mid-sized company, to a more sophisticated environment. Clearly is highly dependent on the tools and also on the leadership and discipline that is established as part of the sales culture that you develop. But there will be differences.
Yeah, when you can find those salespeople that you've described that can do that, boy, I tell you, you're hiring A players that are going to cost you dearly too, right? I mean, those folks aren't going to come cheap. So,
I never said it was cheap.
I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, so, such a good back and forth here. One of the things that maybe we can all agree on is that since the pandemic, organizations have been changed, quite significantly, right? They've had to relook at their businesses, they've had to look at their customers, they've had to look at their products, they've had to look at their distribution. We've gotten a couple of perspectives from some of our past guests. We would love to hear your perspective. I mean, how has the pandemic changed the way that you sell, if at all? I mean, it may very well that it's not changed at all and it's remained the same and you've managed to do something that nobody else has managed to do, but I would love to hear kind of your perspective on that.
Oh, wow. I'm not even sure where to start. Nothing's the same. Everything, Carlos, everything is different. And let's just start there. So probably, let's just call it 70%. I'm going to use a very vague number here, of mid-size and large companies still do not have their employees working in their offices on a full-time basis. And that's probably not a stretch. So I have spent the day on Zoom calls. If I haven't been on 8, I've been on 10 Zoom calls all day. So am I getting on a plane flying to see these customers I would normally do? No, I'm not. Am I talking to people this morning in the UK? Am I talking to someone in Sweden? Have I talked to someone in Asia? The answer is yes. So am I more productive today because of technology? Yes. Am I touching a lot more people? Yes. But it's different having this conversation via the computer versus you and I sitting in your office or having a bite to eat in a cafe. So the world has changed in so many positive ways, but also we've lost that human connection, which when we do get together with a colleague or we do get together with a customer, we haven't met face to face. I mean, people are hugging each other, and it's really it's a completely different feeling, which is really exciting. So yes,
you've been responsible for some of the super spreader events. Is that what you're saying?
I'm starting.
No,
And
please.
I'm looking forward to a trip in late November to the UK, so I can actually travel overseas now, which is great. So, with all that being said, Carlos and Philip, what I would say is has technology has driven a lot of positive things. It also has lacked the human piece of it. What I would say is for salespeople, we've had to become much more adaptable and much more resilient because we don't know what's coming at us, and we've had to try to figure out how to adapt to keep the connection with your customers, keep the interpersonal development, but also try to build new relationships with people that you've never met face to face. So that's been very interesting. If your organization isn't consumer centric, you better be. I mean, today it's more customer centric than it's ever been before. You've got to get to the right decision makers. I mean, and have to make decisions quickly once you do. And I guess, we've talked a lot, Philip, about the fact-based selling. Companies don't need generalists anymore. That was probably the case. I called myself a generalist probably 10 years ago. You don't need journalists anymore. They don't help you. You need people now that have very specific skill sets that are very good at what they do, because things have become much more specific today. Carlos, if you want to take that a step further, we really could talk a little bit about business to business and business to consumer, B2B and B2C, if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. I mean, give us your perspective on that. I mean, that sounds like where we need to go.
Yeah, so from B2B perspective, let me put on my medical devices. Let me wear my Hoya Vision Care hat for a second. So I am a lens manufacturer. I make eyewear glasses for a living, and I'm selling to a wholesaler. So I'll take a wholesaler up in Minneapolis. Let's just call it Wallman, right? So, in this world of pandemic, my relationship with them probably hasn't changed much. We're using more technology. We're having a lot more frequency in terms of communication. We're sharing a lot more data and information. So I would tell you from a business perspective and process perspective, not a lot of change. In probably most perspectives, it's probably improved, more efficient and more effective for both of us. From a B2C perspective, let's kind of tackle this from two perspectives. Let me take it from a CPG consumer beverage product to Kroger. Direct to retail, right? What does that look like? In some respects, I'm probably having more communication now with that customer, whether it's the buyer, senior management, because I'm not having to fly to Cincinnati and kill all that downtime and waste all that money and everything else. I can have more frequency to drive the base business, because remember, large suppliers within retail right now are performing quite well. The center of the store is done very well because consumers aren't going out to restaurants, they're shopping in store. So the middle of the store that's been dying for the last 10, 15 years is actually doing quite well now. So large suppliers are doing well. But if I'm trying to call on Kroger and I'm a new up and coming company, smaller company, I'm trying to sell something new and I don't have that relationship, it's a struggle for them. They've really had a hard time. And even for large companies trying to sell new products in, it's been a challenge. So there hasn't been a lot of innovation and there haven't been a lot of resets occurring in grocery stores over the past 18 months since the pandemic. The flip side is if I'm a supplier and I'm selling direct to consumer, wow, that business is on fire. If you're a small business today, that's the first thing you should set up is a direct consumer model, because that's where it's at. You can communicate directly to them, you can sell directly to them, and that's how you want to build your brand initially, then take it to retail. But the direct to consumer piece is going here. Let me give you a stat here. 59% of Americans will be buying online this holiday season. Let me say that one more time. 59% of Americans, and that's not food, beverage, that's just in totality. 59% of the Americans are going to buy online this holiday season. To take it one step further, you're probably thinking, well, that's all millennials, right? That's probably someone 30 to 44 years old.
This guy right here.
They're not.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I went shopping.
The millennials are now telling us, no, they're going to go in store this holiday season. Who's the one who's going to be buying online? If you're 60 and older, you're not going in a store. You're buying everything online.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow. I mean, because Europe and Asia has already been there. We're finally catching up.
I mean, curiously, just a follow-up question on that stat, how has that changed since, say, last year or the year before that? I assume it's going up, but what's
It didn't
your,
exist. It didn't. It was in. It was less than percent. It was less than 10%. I mean, it was. It was. I mean, the consumer wasn't the U.S. consumer. I'm not talking Asia or Europe because they've been. If you're talking Asia, Europe, they're 25, 35% of the business has been online, and it's been that way for years. The U.S. has been slow to catch up. So, I mean, that's been the greatest attribute. You know, the pandemic has driven online shopping,
it's,
both direct to consumer and also the retailer now providing that service. So you can go to Walmart, Target, Kroger, anybody else, and they'll deliver it right to your house as well. So, you know, you've got multiple options now.
yeah, that's awesome.
Great. So, Derek, with all these points that we're covering right now, clearly things are changing for the different companies. What should companies be doing now with their sales team or teams to win in the future with all the changes in the industries?
Yeah, Philip, I think we've talked a lot about it a little bit earlier, and that is, companies today have to be investing in their people. I mean, we've talked about it for years and years. I think companies have made decisions to invest money in assets and CapEx, in other pieces of the business. But I would say today, investing in your people, investing to create that inclusive environment for your people, and having that clear purpose of what the company stands for so your employees know what that North Star is, and having clarity on that is probably more important today than ever before. Because as we've talked about the pandemic, everything's changed. So
Right.
people now are leaving their organizations for not because of their manager. They're leaving because of work-life balance and many, many other things. So I think investing, making sure that at least once or twice a year, you're taking surveys, particularly with your sales organization and just overall employees, to understand where they're at, how they're feeling.
So let me just interrupt you there for a second. I'm sure you've heard, the big walkout out there, a lot of people resigning from jobs. And to your point earlier, a lot of the sales or commercial aspect of businesses are being done virtually. What are you, and I agree with the fact on investing in people. In my experience in the past, a lot of the challenges have been when you have sales individuals that are not 100% knowledgeable of the product, right? So they could only be as effective as the knowledge they have. Is that what you mean by investing in people, or encompassing more than that?
Yeah, it's the softer skills, but it's the technical skills as well. So, and that's what happens with your sales organization. When I stated earlier about the small, medium, and large, when you're a small company, you may not have all the technical skill sets because you've got the relationships, because you've been in the business a long time and you know a lot of people and everything else. All of a sudden, you start to move towards this technical piece, and it becomes using technology on your computer. It's now having fact-based selling we've talked a lot about, and understanding how to use that because you have to do more suggestive selling today, where you're providing information and trying to convince people to see it and understand it and do something with it. So the selling process has dramatically changed, which means technical and soft skills are both critical in the training and developing of your people. And you have to know your own products. And we've found that in the company I'm currently with today, Southern Champions. Many of our employees didn't really know the ingredients in our products. And and we've had people with us for 2 years and didn't really know the ingredients. And that is scary.
Yeah,
But
it is.
you sure as heck better know your own. But if you don't know what's in your competitors' products, that's another problem too, right? So, because today in the world today we're in, you have to have a point of difference. Differentiation is everything. I mean, you don't get in if you're the 8th, 10th player in the category, whatever it may be. You're not getting in. So, if you don't have a point of difference and you can't sell what that difference is, which takes completely different selling skills, right, and knowledge. So, as you evolve, boy, I can tell you, and I've seen it from small companies to mid-sized companies, you really have to transform that selling organization because what you start with and what you end up with have to be two different products. And
Right,
you do it over
right.
time. You don't do it overnight, right?
No, and I agree with that. I mean, my experience has been the most successful sales individuals have been the people that understand the product, and that's just to understand the technical aspect of it. But I can actually speak to the virtues of the product, whether it's a product, a service, a solution, whatever it might be, and that creates the differentiation on speech. Once they meet with the customer, and I think there are those people that have that ability to put it together versus those that are just reading of a manual and can't make that click, that connection with the customer.
Yeah, yeah. Having that specific knowledge, but then having the ability, because every good salesperson has the ability to tell the story.
Yeah.
You've
Yes,
got
sir.
to be able to tell the story about the how and why, but how it's different and why it's different and what benefits your consumer, this versus this. And that's what's so compelling. But the knowledge base today of the how, when, where is just so important. And unfortunately, the people that have been around, maybe a little gray hair, they've been around a little bit, may have great abilities in persuasive selling and all these other things, but I tell you that they do lack that technical piece of it. And then the younger folks coming up the system that have the technical piece really don't have the art of suggestive and the art of selling. Yeah. And that's where you've got to bridge these two together. And when you can really have that hybrid approach, what you really want to have the little bit of the relationship versus the fact base. When you can bridge those two together, it's a powerful tool. So
here's a question for you, Derek. How important is, especially given all the competition, all the similar types of products out there, how important is sort of customer centricity these days? Being able to narrow in on customers' needs. And I'm thinking even in your example where it is you're doing kind of a B to B to C, you got to know who that consumer is, but you also need to know kind of what the customer's needs are so you can offer the right kinds of services in the same way at the right price, with the right distribution, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about customer centricity?
Yeah, so I go back to the point I made earlier saying generalists don't exist anymore. I mean, they're really not that effective. And for the simple point, that Carlos, that you just brought up. So in that particular case, you typically start with a brand and a category is what you start with on the brand perspective. And then from a commercial selling side, you start at channel and customer. And when you really break out brand and category and then break out channel and customer, they're so different. So how you sell to a club store is much different than how you sell to a mass retailer or how you sell to a convenience store. And the level of data and insight you have about the consumer and the level of how you service and the profitability of those different channels are so different. So the skill set and the knowledge is very technical. So customer centricity of knowing what's important to a convenience store in terms of night delivery, service, impulse, single serve, all those things are so much different than Walmart, which is, it's a completely different animal. So, having someone to manage all those channels of business today is not effective. Someone who's very specific in convenience versus dealing with Walmart is absolutely critical because the selling skills, knowledge, and techniques are just, they're very different. Your question, I'm sorry if that was long-winded.
No, go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, I was on that. Perhaps just for our listeners, a lot of these middle market companies have a lot of opportunities, right? They've got a new product or services like I can go here, I can go here. How do you evaluate and make a decision? Look, I only have so much human capital, so much resources. How do I choose? Well, I should go to, I don't know, this big retail chain versus direct to consumer. How do you make the decision?
Yeah, I don't want to say that's an easy decision, but that is the simple point is really you have to start with a mid-tier plan, which I'm talking about, right? And kind of a strategic roadmap for 3 years out. And you really just have to it goes back to looking at your brand and the category you're competing in and who you're competing against. And then you've got to really look at where your competitive opportunity is. Am I a single serve beverage? Am I a multi-pack or multi-serve? I mean, what is the basis of my business? And then where does my sales warrant? And where do I have the best opportunity to win? Because this is all about winning.
Sure.
And you have to understand what winning looks like. You have to be able to measure yourself and benchmark yourself against your competitor, and knowing who your competitor is just as important as knowing who your product is and your consumer. So I think once you know your landscape and you can set your channel strategy, and then more importantly, your customer strategy, that kind of dictates where you play, because you only have $1 and you've got to invest that dollar in the right areas to get the greatest return. And that investment in the first 12 to 18 months may look a lot different than month 36 to 64, right? So as you evolve.
One of the things that, as you were describing, I was thinking about, Derek, was something that quite a big sales guy that I worked with in the past once said to me, and he was talking all about plan, right? Making plan. And, he was making the comment that, that there is a mass merchandiser. We won't talk about names or anything like that. He said, they can make your life really, really difficult. He goes, but in one afternoon, they could make your year. And this is the point that he was trying to make, that, when you're starting off your plan year, you can be a little bit more innovative. You can be a little bit more experimental. You can be a little bit more selective about who you go and where you go and when you go. But as you're getting towards, the half or the third quarter, or God forbid, you're getting into the fourth quarter and you haven't made your plan yet, well, you better pull out the big guns. And his point was that, what drives everything in that moment is making plan. I mean, is that your take as well?
Yeah, it's from a sales perspective, it's all about the annual plan. To a company, it's more about the kind of 3 to, I hate to say 5 year, because year 4 and 5 are usually a stretch, but that 3-year plan is everything, right? Is making sure that you've got a succession plan on how you're going to build and where that's going to come from and what investments you need to make to drive that scale. Because Philip, the thing that, as we're having this conversation that makes me just nervous as heck is, all right, everybody wants to be in that retailer. Pick the retailer, right? The one that starts with K or W or whatever it may be. And, the problem with that is be careful what you wish for, because that's a curse and a blessing, because the pressure they put on your system with delivery, supply chain, logistics, ERP, I mean, all the nightmare behind the system that salesperson doesn't understand or appreciate can cripple a company overnight. So,
No, absolutely. And I think that's where the planning aspect, the account management and planning aspect of it has to be a holistic approach with management, whether you have sales operations or the financial guy, because at the end of the day, any business survives based on profitable sales, right? And there are some channels out there that are quite expensive to exist. You have a lot of volume, but you may not make any profit out of it. Right. But it's got to, it's like everything else. You have to be strategic. Maybe I need the presence, I need the traction. And this is what I'm willing to do and sacrifice to get my brand, my product out there. And I have to explore other channels, in which case, I'll be able to justify my presence here because I'm more profitable direct to consumer per se. So you gotta evaluate all of these different variables. I don't think there's a silver bullet to making a decision.
I think it's a brilliant point. I was reflecting, as you were saying that, I was reflecting on a class I once ran. I partnered with a CFO when we were running a finance for non-financial managers training course, right? And so, here's the CFO who's kind of co-teaching this class, and you've got all these sales guys coming in. And the point that he was trying to make was, not every sale is a good sale, right? It's got to be a profitable sale, right? Because what he was finding was that the sales team was going out there and selling and selling and selling, and they were giving things away along the way. And they weren't respecting, things like EPS, and they weren't expecting or paying attention to things like the cost of goods or the cost of sales, or frankly, the cost of marketing, and the way that they were working with the client. The client on the other hand was going, oh yeah, they're throwing all this stuff at me. This is fantastic. But it was the CFO who's basically saying, guys, we're going to have to look a little bit more closely at how it is that we're structuring some of these deals because we're taking a bath on them, right? And that therein lies one of those, I think, interesting conflicts that can exist between, the financial side of the house and the sales side of the house sometimes. Derek, from your perspective, is that real, or have we fixed all those problems and it doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, Carlos. So I think the point is I'm aligned with you in that thinking. However, I think from a sales perspective, which is why we could, Philip, we could have a conversation about joint business planning and make that an hour-long call, because joint business planning is truly the ultimate win-win for all parties with the customer, depending on which customer that may be. But there's the art of blending here. And this is where revenue management is so good, because revenue management finds the win-win for the supplier, win-win for the customer, and more importantly, win-win for the consumer. So when you can find that sweet spot, if you want to call it, for all three parties, that's truly the best scenario. So in many cases, Carlos, there's certain packages and products in your portfolio that you're willing to give margin on because you've got other brands and or packages that offset or accelerate, right? So how you blend that out to achieve your overall plan is a little art and science to it. But yeah, I mean, the headline is profits the king, and you've got to make good financial decisions for all parties. Short.
No, and I agree with that. Look, I've been, I guess, challenged or blessed. I don't know which one. I'm a recovering CFO and then the sales guy, general manager. So I've seen both sides of the equation and defended both sides furiously. But
I like you now, Philip. You're on my team.
100%. But the reality is, we keep on thinking that the business is very binary. You make money, you don't make money. It's like, it isn't. It's dynamic, right? The reality is that there's different stages or phases of a business. And there are times when you're willing to sacrifice margin, you're willing to sacrifice profitability to gain market share, to gain presence. And it is the management's responsibility, clearly with sales leadership, to come up with products that are, in the next cycle, make up the margin, right? But if you're going to look at a sales organization as just 100% transactional, you didn't make money this month, then you're being extremely tactical and not very strategic about the direction of the business. So it is something that changes, and you have to be able to evaluate that in your strategy development.
Which is why innovation is so critical, but innovation has to be accretive, but many times it's not, which takes you back, Philip, to your point on your core business. How you manage your revenue and margin on your core business is really through your mix of products. It's through your rate, your price, right, which you can take up or down or whatever it may be, and or lift, which is through your promotions and things like that. So, it's not hard to, we know the key measures. It's how you pull those levers,
right,
drive your overall business in partnership with your customer that your consumer is willing to pay for. Because we can get all excited about what we think we could sell it for, but if the consumer's not going to buy it at that price, well, then.
That's right. Hey, Derek, I've got one final question for you. This probably doesn't require a real long answer. And then Philip may have a final as well. But, one of the things that I often got quite frustrated about when I was, the HR business partner for big sales teams, and sitting in some of those business reviews, you'll recall those business reviews, right? They were like the Spanish Inquisition, a lot of them, was just the bemoaning by the senior leadership of how bad some salespeople were at forecasting their sales. My question to you is this: with all of the technology that's now available to us, with all this great sales talent that's being developed, have we gotten any better? That's the question. Have we gotten any better at forecasting our sales?
The short answer is yes.
Yay!
And if not, you're fired. I'll say one thing here is the tools and capabilities today are far superior than what they were 5 or 10 years ago. So there's no reason why you don't have the ability to do it. It's now truly, and I will say this on record, the best salesperson can forecast their business. You find a
Yeah.
good salesperson, they can forecast their business, and forget the tools, right? Because what that means is you know your business, you're talking to the right people, and you're having the right impact on it, and you understand the revenue, you understand the profitability, you understand the whole picture. The salespeople that's just out trying to be the so-called hunter that's going out to get the prize, whether it costs them this or that, we don't need them.
They've got their place. They've got their place.
So to that point, and I would agree with that to a great extent. The only challenge would be when you say, Carlos, forecasting for the next month, next 6 months, 12 months. No, because it makes a difference. For instance, guys, nowadays it's no secret that we have an issue with supply chains, right? Globally.
Absolutely.
I mean, you may have the demand of the consumer, and you may have the right product and pricing and channel and all that, but there may be components that your supply chain may not be able to provide. So I agree with Derek. I mean, Derek, if you can do that, man, that's fantastic. But you have to be clear on the forecasting. Does that mean a rolling forecast of, monthly, quarterly? Because 6 months to now, picture has changed tremendously.
Yeah, it's a great point.
But that's demand planning, and that's all being done internally, because you've got algorithms, you've got plenty of intelligence inside the organization that's anticipating that. The sales team is probably really good, Carlos, at forecasting. Let's just call it 1 to maybe 3-4 months out. Anything beyond that is really a stretch. And unfortunately what's happening now, because of all the supply chain issues, and because retailers are promoting less with price. There's less price promotions because they don't need to. The consumer's coming to the store. They don't need to discount the price anymore.
That's right. They come with the price on their phone, right? This is the price I want.
And absolutely right. I mean, people know walking in, they know what the price is before they ever get in there. They've already done their homework, most consumers, right? But retailers don't need to use price promotions and everything else to get people in the stores. The people are coming to the stores because they're not going out to dinner at restaurants, and not going to bars as often and things like that. So the promotional frequency and cycle has changed, but the demand has still stayed high or increased, which for companies, Philip, to your point, I mean, that is so hard to predict.
Yeah, it is. Wow, look, this is fantastic, Derek. I mean, we could talk on sales for the next 2 or 3 hours. I think we'll have you back, because there's so many more points we'd like to get our listeners that I'm sure they want to listen to and learn from. But we also want to be cognizant of your time, and we want to be, we want to thank you for taking the time to share your insights with us. I don't know, Carlos, anything else? You had any questions? Or
no, I'd just say, Derek, we may have a listener out there or a viewer who might want to connect with you. Are you open to something like that?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. How do you recommend they find you?
Probably you can find me either on LinkedIn or my email address is Derek, DEREKM Dodge, DODGE @gmail.com. Gentlemen, thanks. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is
Great.
fantastic. Derek, I really appreciate you taking the time for us.
Yeah, I mean, once again, Derek, thank you so much. Carlos, it's been fantastic. Once again, this is another episode of Managing Middle Markets. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, be good, do good.